The ship came out of nowhere. One moment the sky above New Busan Colony was clear and full of stars. The next moment, a massive alien vessel hung in orbit like a dark cloud. It was shaped like a teardrop, covered in strange patterns that glowed with soft purple light. The people on the ground stopped what they were doing and looked up. They had never seen anything like it. Admiral Park Jun-ho received the news while eating his breakfast on the orbital station Gwangwamon. He put down his chopsticks and read the message twice. An alien ship. First contact. After 200 years of expanding into space, humanity had finally met someone else. He walked to the command center with calm steps. His officers were already there, staring at screens filled with data about the strange vessel. Dr. Yoon Minji, the station's chief xenobiologist, was studying the ship's energy readings with wide eyes. "What do we know?" Jun-ho asked. "They sent a message," Minji said. "They call themselves the Pallid Collective. They want to talk." Jun-ho nodded slowly. "Then we will talk." The alien delegation arrived 2 hours later. They came in a small shuttle that floated through the station's docking bay like a ghost. When the doors opened, Jun-ho got his first look at the beings who had crossed the stars to find humanity. They were tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed almost transparent. Their eyes were large and black, without any white parts. They had no hair, no ears that Jun-ho could see, and their mouths were small slits that barely moved when they spoke. They wore robes made of some shiny material that changed colors as they walked. The leader of the group stepped forward. He was taller than the others, and he wore a golden chain around his neck. His translator device spoke in a flat, mechanical voice. "I am High Emissary Vorath of the Pallid Collective. I speak for 12 species and 3,000 years of civilization. You will listen." Jun-ho raised an eyebrow. This was not the greeting he had expected. "Welcome to Gwangwamon Station. I am Admiral Park Jun-ho. We are honored by your visit." Vorath made a sound that might have been laughter. It was not a pleasant sound. "Honor is not why we are here, small one. We are here because you have expanded into space that belongs to us. Your kind has built colonies on 17 worlds in the past century. This cannot continue." Minji stepped closer to Jun-ho and whispered, "Their body language suggests extreme confidence. They don't see us as equals." Jun-ho had already noticed that. Vorath looked at him the way a person might look at an insect. There was no respect in those black eyes, only cold judgment. "We were not aware that this space was claimed," Jun-ho said carefully. "We detected no signals, no markers, no." "Because we did not think we needed them," Vorath interrupted. "Lesser species have always known to stay away. Your kind is new. You are ignorant. We forgive this." He waved one long, thin hand in a dismissive gesture. "But now you know, and now you will obey." A heavy silence fell over the room. Jun-ho's officers exchanged nervous glances. Dr. Minji's face had gone pale. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" Jun-ho asked. Vorath pulled out a small device and projected a holographic map into the air. It showed human space, with 3 colony worlds highlighted in red. "You will give us these 3 worlds. They contain resources we need. You will also pay tribute each year, minerals, food, whatever we require, and you will accept protected species status. This means you will not expand further. You will not build warships. You will not leave your designated space without permission." Jun-ho stared at the map. 3 worlds, millions of people, and protected species status, which sounded very much like slavery with extra steps. "And if we refuse?" he asked quietly. Vorath smiled. At least Jun-ho thought it was a smile. It looked more like a wound opening on that pale face. "The last species that refused our terms was called the Vreen. They were proud warriors. They had a fleet of 2,000 ships. We destroyed them in 9 days. Their homeworld is now a mining colony. Their people dig in the dirt for us." He paused to let the words sink in. "You have 72 hours to accept our terms. Use this time wisely, small one. Think of your people, think of your children, do the smart thing. Junho stood very still. His heart was beating fast, but his face showed nothing. He had commanded ships in battle. He had faced pirates, rebels, and natural disasters. He had learned long ago to hide his emotions when it mattered. Dr. Minji touched his arm gently. Admiral, we should discuss this with. Yes, Junho said, we should. He turned back to Voreth and did something unexpected. He smiled. It was a warm, genuine smile that seemed to confuse the alien completely. Thank you for the generous timeline, High Emissary. 72 hours is more than enough. We will prepare our response. Voreth tilted his head. You thank us. Of course, you came all this way. You explained your position clearly. You gave us time to consider. This is very civilized of you. Junho bowed slightly. We will contact you when we are ready. The aliens looked at each other. Something passed between them that Junho could not read. Then Voreth nodded stiffly. 72 hours. Do not test our patience. He turned and walked back to his shuttle. His guards followed. The doors closed. The shuttle floated away. And just like that, the first diplomatic meeting between humanity and the Pallid Collective was over. Dr. Minji let out a long breath. That was unexpected. They think we're afraid, Lieutenant Kang Tiho said. He was young, barely 30, but he had the sharpest tactical mind on the station. They think your smile means submission. Let them think that, Junho said. He was already walking toward the communications room. It will make what comes next more interesting. Minji hurried after him. Admiral, what are you planning? We can't fight them. Did you hear what he said about the Vreen? 2,000 ships destroyed in 9 days. We only have. I know what we have, Junho said. He reached the communications console and began entering codes. High-priority codes. Codes that had not been used since the Third Solar War. Tiho's eyes went wide. Sir, is that? Protocol Hammer, Junho confirmed. They wanted negotiation. They came here expecting us to beg. They looked at us and saw a weak, primitive species that would break easily. He finished entering the codes and pressed the send button. Somewhere, deep in the cold darkness of the Uit cloud, machines that had been sleeping for decades began to wake up. They made one mistake, Junho continued. They didn't do their research. They don't know what Earth is. They don't know what made us. They see soft skin and small bodies and assume we are prey. He turned to face his officers. His smile was gone now. In its place was something older, something harder, something that humanity had carried in its bones since the first human ancestor picked up a rock and decided to fight back. Send a message to Terran High Command. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what the collective demands. And tell them to send the Armada. Dr. Minji's face had gone from pale to white. The Armada, Admiral, that's our entire hidden fleet. 400 dreadnoughts. We built those for the end of the world. The collective thinks this is negotiation, Junho said. They're wrong. This is the end of their world. They just don't know it yet. Outside the station, Voreth's cruiser was jumping to faster-than-light speed. He was probably already reporting to his superiors, telling them that the humans were frightened and ready to submit. He had no idea what was coming. No one in the galaxy did. The Uit cloud was the coldest, darkest place in the Sol system. It existed at the very edge of the sun's reach, where light took years to travel and temperatures dropped to nearly absolute zero. Nothing lived there. Nothing moved there, or so the galaxy believed. Captain Lihana stood on the bridge of the Hammer of Sol and watched the lights come on. One by one, the great ships were waking up. Their engines glowed red, then orange, then white as power flooded through systems that had been silent for decades. She had spent 5 years training for this moment. She had hoped it would never come, but she was not surprised that it had. Humanity always prepared for war. It was in their nature. The Hammer of Sol was 3 kilometers long. It was shaped like a blade, sleek and deadly, covered in armor plating that could survive direct hits from nuclear weapons. Its main cannon could crack a small moon in half. It carried 2,000 crew members and 500 Marines, and it was just one of 400. "All systems online," her first officer reported. "The fleet is waking up." Hana nodded. Around her, in every direction, dreadnoughts were emerging from their long sleep. They had been built in secret over the course of a century. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering, designed for one purpose and one purpose only: to destroy anything that threatened humanity's survival. "Open a channel to the flagship," she ordered. "Admiral Junho will want a status report." Across the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Engineers ran final checks on weapons systems. Marines loaded into drop pods and tested their armor. Pilots warmed up their fighters. The greatest war machine humanity had ever built was coming to life. And in the cold depths of space, Admiral Park Junho watched it happen with grim satisfaction. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Scholar Tyvan was having a very bad day. He had spent 30 years studying primitive species. It was his specialty, his passion, his life's work. He had written 17 books about species that the collective had conquered or absorbed. He knew more about alien biology and culture than almost anyone alive. And he knew that his government had just made a terrible mistake. The council chamber was vast and beautiful, filled with floating lights and holographic displays. 12 species were represented here, each one a member of the Pallid Collective. Elder Morath sat at the center, his pale face showing no emotion as Tyvan presented his findings. "The planet they come from is called Earth," Tyvan said. His voice shook slightly. "It is what we would classify as a death world, Category 4, possibly Category 5. The council members murmured to each other. A death world was a planet where everything was trying to kill everything else. They were rare and usually avoided. No intelligent species was supposed to evolve on such a world. "Explain," Elder Morath said. Tyvan pulled up his data. Images appeared in the air above him. Images that made several council members look away in horror. Their sun bombards them with radiation. Their planet has extreme weather, storms, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Their oceans are filled with predators. Their land is covered in poisonous plants and dangerous animals." He took a deep breath. "And they breathe oxygen, pure, oxidizing oxygen, the same gas that makes fire possible." "This is known," Morath said impatiently. "Many primitive species live in harsh conditions." "But they are not primitive," Tyvan said. "That is what I am trying to explain. Look at their history." He showed them images of human warfare. Ancient battles with swords and spears, medieval sieges with catapults and arrows, modern conflicts with guns and bombs, and then the wars that came after they reached space. Ships exploding, planets burning, death on a scale that made the collective's conquests look like minor disagreements. "They have been killing each other since before they could write," Tyvan said. "They evolved as prey animals, surrounded by predators stronger and faster than themselves. So they learned to use tools, to make weapons, to work together, to fight back." He paused, his voice dropped lower. "And they never stopped. Their entire civilization is built on conflict. They eat other animals. They poison themselves for pleasure with substances they call alcohol and caffeine. They exercise by lifting heavy objects and running for no reason. They survive wounds that would kill any of us. Their immune systems are so aggressive that they often attack their own bodies." Elder Morath raised one thin hand. "Enough, you are wasting our time, scholar. High Emissary Vorath has already met them. He says they are weak, frightened, ready to submit." "Vorath is wrong," Tyvan said desperately. "He does not understand what he saw. When humans are afraid, they do not show it. They hide their emotions. They smile when they are angry. They speak softly when they are about to attack. It is a hunting technique, A survival trait. They are predators disguised as prey. The council murmured again, but Morath simply shook his head. You give these creatures too much credit. They have 17 colony worlds. We have over 3,000. They have no visible military strength. We have crushed civilizations 10 times their size. The collective has ruled this region of space for 3 millennia. We have nothing to fear from a species that discovered fire only a few thousand years ago. Tyvan wanted to scream. He wanted to shake the elder until he understood, but he knew it would do no good. The collective was too proud, too confident, too blind to see the danger. I beg you, he said quietly. Withdraw the ultimatum, leave them alone, find another way. Morath stood. The meeting was over. The humans will submit or they will die. It is that simple. Return to your studies, scholar. Leave strategy to those who understand it. Tyvan watched the council members file out of the chamber. He stood alone in the empty room for a long time, staring at the holographic image of Earth that still floated in the air. A beautiful blue world, covered in water and life and danger. The birthplace of monsters. Back in human space, the fleet was ready. 400 dreadnoughts, 2,000 cruisers and destroyers, 80,000 marines in full combat armor, and Admiral Park Junho standing on the bridge of the command ship, watching the clock count down. 30 hours until the deadline. Dr. Yoon Minji stood beside him, still looking worried. Are you sure about this, Admiral? Once we cross their border with this fleet, there is no going back. They already crossed our border, Junho said. They threatened our people. They demanded our worlds. They called us small and weak and primitive. This was never going to end with negotiation. Lieutenant Kang Tiho looked up from his tactical display. I have a question, sir. Why did we hide the fleet? Why pretend to be weak? Junho smiled slightly. Because the universe is dangerous, Lieutenant. Because every species we might meet is a potential enemy. And because the best defense is making your enemy underestimate you. He gestured at the massive fleet floating around them. The collective thought they were threatening a defenseless colony. They had no idea they were poking a sleeping giant. Now they will learn. Captain Lee Hana's voice came over the comm system. Hammer of Soul reporting. All ships ready for jump. Awaiting your order, Admiral. Junho took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would change everything. The moment when humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy. All ships, he said, begin jump sequence. Destination collective border, formation hammer. Across the fleet, 400 dreadnoughts aligned themselves into a massive wedge formation. Their engines powered up to full. Space itself began to bend around them as they prepared to punch through to faster-than-light speed. Remember, Junho said to his crew, we did not start this, we did not want this, but we will finish it. Sergeant Cho Minyu, leader of the Marine Battalion, checked his weapon one final time. He had fought in 3 wars already. He had seen friends die and enemies beg for mercy. He was not afraid. Around him, his Marines were the same. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for combat, who had pushed their bodies to the limit and beyond, who knew exactly what they were and what they were capable of. They were humans, Deathworlders, survivors of a planet that had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. And now they were going to war. The fleet jumped, space twisted and tore, stars became streaks of light, and 400 of the most powerful warships ever built disappeared into the void. The collective had no idea what was coming. They would learn soon enough. High Emissary Vorath was pleased with himself. He floated in the command center of his diplomatic cruiser, surrounded by his staff, waiting for the humans to arrive and surrender. This was his greatest achievement. He had brought another species into the collective's control without firing a single shot. The council would reward him greatly. Around him, 50 escort ships drifted in a ceremonial formation. They were not warships. They were honor guards, meant to impress the primitive humans with the collective's power and beauty. Fleet Commander Rin had wanted to bring real military vessels, but Vorath had refused. There was no need. The humans were already defeated. They just did not know it yet. Any signal from the human delegation? Vorath asked. Not yet, High Emissary, but there is still time. The deadline does not expire for another 12 hours. Vorath made a satisfied sound. They are probably arguing among themselves, trying to decide who will be the one to admit defeat. It is always the same with primitive species. He was still talking when the first alarm went off. The sensor officer froze at his console. His pale face went even paler. High Emissary, we are detecting incoming vessels. The human delegation, Vorath said. Finally, how many ships? The officer did not answer. His hands were shaking as he checked the readings again. How many ships? Vorath demanded. I cannot count them, High Emissary. The sensors cannot count them. There are too many. Space tore open. It was not like normal faster-than-light travel, which was smooth and quiet. This was violent. This was a wound in reality itself. A hole appeared in the darkness, growing larger and larger, and through it came ships. Big ships, bigger than anything Vorath had ever seen. 3 kilometers long, covered in armor and weapons, their engines burning like small suns. They came through the hole one after another, spreading out into a formation that seemed to have no end. 10 ships, 20, 50, 100. The sensor officer was screaming now. 200 vessels, 300, they are still coming. High Emissary, they are still coming. 400 dreadnoughts. 2,000 support vessels. The largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. And at the front, leading them all, was the Hammer of Soul. Captain Lihana stood on her bridge, staring at the tiny collective ships floating before her. They looked like toys, like insects, like nothing at all. Open a channel, Admiral Junho's voice said from the command ship. Let them hear us. Every screen on every collective vessel flickered. Every communication system received the same message. And Admiral Park Junho's face appeared before High Emissary Vorath. He was not smiling this time. You offered us terms, Junho said. His voice was calm and clear. We have considered them. Here is our counteroffer. Leave or be removed. Vorath could not speak. His translator device was making strange sounds, unable to process the words that were trying to come out of his mouth. This was impossible. This could not be happening. The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be afraid. They were supposed to surrender. Fleet Commander Rin, he finally managed to say. Attack them, destroy them, all of them. Rin was already receiving reports from the border garrison. 800 collective warships, stationed in the area to maintain order. They were racing toward the human fleet at maximum speed, their weapons charging. Engage the enemy, Rin ordered. Show them what happens to those who challenge the collective. The battle began. It lasted 11 minutes. Captain Lihana watched the collective ships approach on her tactical display. They were fast and maneuverable, but they were also small. Their weapons were designed to fight other small ships. They had never faced anything like a human dreadnought. Target the lead vessel, she said. Main cannon, fire when ready. The Hammer of Soul's primary weapon was a mass driver the size of a small building. It fired a solid projectile at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The impact was devastating. Rin's flagship ceased to exist. One moment it was there, leading the charge. The next moment it was a cloud of expanding debris. The collective fleet did not slow down. They had never retreated in 3,000 years. They did not know how. So they kept coming, firing their weapons at the human ships. The shots bounced off the dreadnought's armor like rain off a mountain. And then the Marines launched. Sergeant Cho Minyu felt the drop pod shudder as it rocketed toward the nearest collective cruiser. Around him, his squad was checking their weapons and preparing for combat. They had trained for this. They were ready. The pod slammed into the enemy hull and burned through it in seconds. Minu and his marines poured out into the ship's corridor, weapons raised. The collective soldiers they met were not prepared for what they saw. They were used to fighting species that collapsed under pressure, species that gave up when wounded, species that valued their own lives above victory. Humans were different. Minu took a hit to his shoulder within the first 30 seconds of combat. The alien weapon burned through his armor and into his flesh. It hurt a lot, but he did not fall. He did not stop. He raised his rifle with his good arm and kept firing. His squad watched him do this. They watched him fight for 10 more minutes with a hole in his shoulder, killing enemies and leading the charge, before he finally allowed a medic to treat him. The collective soldiers watched too, and they began to understand what they were fighting. On the command ship, Dr. Yoon Minji was monitoring the battle with a mix of horror and fascination. She was a scientist, not a soldier. Violence made her uncomfortable, but she could not deny what she was seeing. "They are retreating," Lieutenant Kang Tiho reported. "The surviving collective ships are running." Admiral Junho nodded. He had expected this. The collective had never lost a battle in 3,000 years. They did not know how to handle defeat. They would run to their leaders and tell them what had happened. They would spread fear throughout their empire. That was the plan. "Let them go," Junho said. "We want survivors, we want witnesses." On Voreth's diplomatic cruiser, chaos reigned. The ceremonial escort ships were scattering in every direction, trying to escape the human fleet. Voreth himself was pressed against the wall of his command center, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. His fleet was gone, 800 ships destroyed or fleeing in less than 15 minutes. The human dreadnoughts floated in formation, barely scratched. "This is not possible," he whispered. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Captain Lee Hana watched the last collective ships disappear into faster-than-light speed. The battle was over. The first victory was theirs. "Damage report," she said. "Minor hull damage to 7 vessels," her first officer replied. 12 casualties, all non-fatal. The enemy lost 432 ships destroyed, 116 captured. Hana let out a slow breath. 12 casualties. 12 wounded Marines, all of whom would recover, against over 500 ships lost on the enemy's side. This was what a Deathworld species could do. This was what 3 billion years of evolution had created. Not just survivors, but conquerors. Not just intelligent beings, but apex predators. Admiral Junho's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, well done. The first phase is complete, but this is only the beginning. The collective will not surrender after one battle. They will send more ships, more soldiers, more everything. We need to make them understand that this is not a war they can win." He paused. "Set course for the collective's inner territories. We are going to liberate every species they have enslaved. We are going to free every world they have conquered. And when we reach their homeworld, we are going to teach them a lesson they will never forget." The fleet began to move. 400 dreadnoughts, unstoppable and unafraid, heading deeper into enemy space. Behind them, the wreckage of the collective border fleet drifted silently in the void. A monument to arrogance, a warning to anyone who might make the same mistake. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not going to negotiate. And the galaxy was about to find out what that meant. The collective had ruled for 3,000 years. In all that time, no enemy had ever reached their inner territories. No species had ever dared to challenge their power so directly. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, enslaved dozens of species, and built an empire that seemed eternal. That empire was now burning. Admiral Park Jun-ho's fleet moved through collective space like a storm. They did not destroy everything in their path. They did not kill without reason. They were not monsters, but they were unstoppable. The first world they liberated was called Threshold. It was a mining colony, worked by members of a species called the Vreen. These were the same Vreen that High Emissary Vorath had mentioned during his ultimatum. The proud warriors who had been crushed in 9 days. The people who now dug in the dirt for their masters. When the human fleet arrived in orbit, the collective garrison commander sent an angry message. This world belongs to the Pallid Collective. Leave immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Jun-ho replied with 3 words, "You have 1 hour." The garrison did not leave. 47 minutes later, it no longer existed. Captain Lee Hana led the ground assault personally. She walked through the ruins of the collective base, stepping over the bodies of soldiers who had refused to retreat. Behind her, Sergeant Cho Minyu and his Marines were freeing the Vreen slaves from their chains. The Vreen looked at the humans with confusion and fear. They had been slaves for so long that they had forgotten what freedom felt like. Some of them tried to keep working, not understanding that they did not have to anymore. Dr. Yoon Minji arrived to help. She had insisted on joining the liberation efforts, despite the danger. She believed that violence without compassion was just cruelty, and she was right. "Tell them they are free," she said to the translator drone. "Tell them the collective cannot hurt them anymore." One of the Vreen, an older female with scars on her arms from years of labor, stepped forward. She was shaking. "Who are you?" she asked. "What species comes to fight the collective?" "We are humans," Minji said. "We come from a world called Earth." The Vreen stared at her. "I have heard of Earth. The archives say it is a death world, a place where nothing should survive." Minji smiled gently. "We survived, and now we are here to help you survive too." The news spread quickly across the galaxy. World after world, the human fleet arrived and gave the collective forces the same choice: leave or die. Some left. Most did not. Most could not believe that they were actually losing. The collective had been the dominant power for so long that defeat seemed impossible. Their commanders kept sending fleets to stop the humans. Their fleets kept getting destroyed. It was like trying to stop a river by throwing stones into it. On the collective homeworld, Elder Morath received reports with growing disbelief. 11 worlds lost in 3 weeks. Hundreds of ships destroyed. Entire armies scattered or captured. And the human fleet was still coming. Scholar Tyvan stood before the council again. This time, no one interrupted him. "I warned you," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "I told you what they were. I showed you their history. You did not listen." Morath's pale face had lost its calm confidence. "How do we stop them? There must be a way." Tyvan shook his head. "You cannot stop them with force. They were born on a world that tried to kill them every day. They evolved to fight, to survive, to never give up. The more you attack them, the stronger they become. The more you threaten them, the more determined they get." "Then what do we do?" Tyvan had been thinking about this question for weeks. He had studied human history, human psychology, human culture, and he had found something surprising, something that might save his people. "They are predators," he said, "but they are not mindless. They do not kill for pleasure. They fight when threatened, but they also know how to stop fighting. They form alliances. They show mercy to those who surrender. They help other species." He pulled up data from the liberated worlds. Images of human soldiers sharing food with former slaves. Human doctors treating wounded collective prisoners. Human engineers helping to rebuild destroyed infrastructure. "They are not trying to destroy us," Tyvan said. "They are trying to defeat us. There is a difference. If we surrender, if we accept their terms, they will let us live." Morath was silent for a long moment. Then he asked, "And if we keep fighting?" Tyvan did not answer. He did not need to. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Lee Hana was having a very different conversation. The fleet had found a labor camp. A real one, not just a mining colony. A place where the collective sent species that were considered too dangerous or too rebellious. A place where prisoners were worked until they died and then replaced with new prisoners. Hana stood at the gates of the camp, looking at the conditions inside. The prisoners were thin and sick. Many had untreated injuries. Some were chained together in groups, forced to work as a unit. The guards had been running the camp for decades, treating the inmates like animals. Something inside Hana snapped. "Sergeant Minyu," she said quietly. "Captain, take the camp, free the prisoners and the guards." She paused. Her hands were shaking. "The guards do not leave." Minyu nodded. He understood. Some things were beyond forgiveness. The assault was quick and brutal. Human Marines poured through the camp, overwhelming the collective guards with speed and fury. The prisoners watched in amazement as their captors fell one by one. Hana fought alongside her Marines. She was not normally a ground soldier, but this was personal. This was rage made physical. This was humanity's oldest instinct: protect the weak, punish the cruel. By the time it was over, the camp was liberated. 2,000 prisoners from 6 different species were finally free, and the guards who had tormented them would never hurt anyone again. Dr. Minji arrived an hour later, bringing medical supplies and food. She did not ask what had happened to the guards. She could see the answer in Hana's eyes. "We saved them," Hana said. "That is what matters." Minji nodded. She wanted to believe that was true. She wanted to believe that justice and vengeance could be the same thing. Maybe sometimes they could. That night, a coded message arrived on Admiral Junho's command ship. It was from Scholar Tyvan, offering to provide intelligence about collective defenses. In exchange, he asked only that humanity spare the innocent citizens of his world. Lieutenant Kang Tiho analyzed the message carefully. "It could be a trap," he said. "It could be," Junho agreed. "But I do not think so. He is a scholar, not a soldier. He sees what is coming and he wants to save his people." "Can we trust him?" Junho thought about the question. Trust was a complicated thing. It required risk and hope and sometimes a little foolishness. But it was also how alliances were formed, how enemies became friends, how peace was eventually built. "Contact him," Junho said. "Tell him we accept his offer, and tell him that if his information is good, we will remember it when the war is over." The message was sent. A few hours later, detailed maps of collective defenses began arriving. Locations of military bases, patrol routes, communication networks. Everything humanity needed to reach the enemy homeworld. The fleet prepared for its final push. 400 dreadnoughts, scarred but unbroken, formed up around the command ship. Ahead of them lay the heart of the collective empire, the world where the Council ruled, the place where this war would end. "All ships," Junho announced, "begin the final jump. We are going to finish this." The engines powered up. Space bent around the fleet, and humanity's armada vanished into the void, heading toward its destiny. The collective's time was running out, and they finally knew it. The collective homeworld was beautiful. It hung in space like a jewel, covered in silver cities and purple oceans. Billions of people lived there, going about their daily lives, trying not to think about the war that had gone so terribly wrong. And then the sky filled with human ships. 400 dreadnoughts dropped out of faster-than-light speed and formed a blockade around the planet. They did not fire. They did not attack. They simply waited, their weapons pointing at the world below. Admiral Park Junho's message was broadcast on every frequency. His face appeared on every screen. His words reached every citizen of the collective. "This is Admiral Park Junho of the Terran Fleet. Your military has been defeated. Your empire has fallen. You have 2 choices. Send your elder Morath to negotiate or watch your homeworld burn. You have 1 hour. The council chamber was silent. Elder Moreth sat in his chair, staring at nothing. Around him, the other council members were arguing, blaming each other, trying to find someone to hold responsible for this disaster. High Emissary Vorath was there too. He had escaped the battle at the border and made it home, only to face this final humiliation. The species he had dismissed as weak and primitive was now hovering above his world with enough firepower to turn it into dust. "We must fight," one council member said. "We cannot surrender to these animals." "Fight with what?" another replied. "They destroyed everything we sent against them. Our fleets are gone. Our armies are scattered. We have nothing left." Moreth raised his hand. The room fell silent. "Enough," he said. His voice was tired. "I will go to them. I will negotiate." Vorath stepped forward. "Elder, let me come with you. I was the one who started this. I should be the one too." "Yes," Moreth interrupted. "You should. You will join me. You will see what your arrogance has cost us." 1 hour later, a small shuttle left the planet's surface and flew toward the human fleet. It docked with the dreadnought Hammer of Soul, and Elder Moreth stepped aboard. He was met by human marines in full armor. They did not speak. They simply escorted him through the massive ship, past crew members who watched him with cold eyes, until he reached a conference room. Admiral Park Jun-Ho was waiting for him. Moreth had expected a monster, a beast covered in scars and rage. Instead, he saw a middle-aged man with a calm face and quiet eyes. Captain Lee Hana stood beside him, along with Dr. Yoon Minji and Lieutenant Kang Tiho. They looked like scholars and bureaucrats, not warriors. But Moreth knew better now. He had seen what these soft-looking creatures could do. "Please sit," Jun-Ho said. His voice was polite, almost friendly. "We have much to discuss." Moreth sat. Vorath sat beside him, his eyes fixed on the table. He could not look at the humans. He could not face what he had done. Jun-Ho slid a data tablet across the table. "These are our terms. You will release all enslaved species immediately. You will pay reparations to every world you have conquered. You will reduce your military by half. And you will recognize human space as sovereign territory, now and forever." Moreth read the terms slowly. They were harsh but not impossible. The collective would survive. It would be weaker, smaller, humiliated, but it would survive. "If we refuse?" he asked. Dr. Minji leaned forward. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "May I explain something, Elder?" Moreth nodded. On Earth, when a predator defeats a rival, it has two choices: kill or dominate, complete destruction or forced submission. There is no middle ground, no compromise. She paused. "You threatened our colonies. You demanded our surrender. You called us weak and primitive. By the laws of our world, by the instincts written into our very genes, we should destroy you." She let the words sink in. "We could glass your worlds. Every city, every settlement, everything. We have the power. We have the means. Our history shows that we are capable of such things. We have done them to each other many times." Moreth's pale face went even paler. "But we are choosing not to," Minji continued. "We are choosing to let you live, to let you rebuild, to give you a second chance. That is the only mercy Deathworlders know how to give, and you should take it because you will not get another offer." Silence filled the room. Moreth looked at the data tablet again. His hands were trembling. "Very well," he said finally. "I accept your terms." He pressed his hand against the tablet, signing the agreement. It was done. 3,000 years of collective dominance ended in a single moment, in a conference room aboard a human warship. But before he left, Moreth asked one question. It was the question that had been burning in his mind since this nightmare began. "You are Deathworlders," he said. "You evolved on a planet that tried to kill you every day. You spent millions of years fighting each other. War is in your blood, destruction is in your nature." He paused. "So why did you not destroy yourselves? How are you still here?" Admiral Junho smiled slightly. It was the first smile Moreth had seen from him. "We tried," Junho said. "Many times. We fought wars that killed millions. We built weapons that could end all life on our world. We came close to extinction more than once." He leaned forward. "But we are still here. We survived. We adapted. We learned. Not because we stopped being dangerous, but because we learned to control it, to choose when to fight and when to stop, to be predators when we need to be and builders when we want to be." He stood up. "That is why you never had a chance against us. You thought you were threatening a weak species that would break under pressure. You were wrong. You were threatening the most successful survivors in the galaxy, a species that has already faced extinction and won, a species that knows exactly how to destroy and exactly when to show mercy." He extended his hand. Moreth hesitated, then took it. "Go home, Elder. Rebuild your society, treat other species with respect, and never ever threaten humanity again." Moreth left the ship. His shuttle returned to the planet below, and the human fleet remained in orbit, watching, waiting, making sure the terms were followed. 1 year later, the galaxy was a different place. The collective still existed, but it was smaller now. The enslaved species had formed their own alliance, with Earth as their protector. Scholar Tyvan had become the new ambassador to humanity, working to build bridges between former enemies. The liberated Vreen had started to rebuild their culture. Their new leaders visited Earth and walked through cities that seemed impossibly alive. They saw humans eating meat, climbing mountains for fun, and throwing themselves out of aircraft for pleasure. They understood now why the collective had never stood a chance. Captain Lihana took command of the newly formed Galactic Peacekeeping Fleet. Her job was to make sure that no one tried what the collective had tried. So far, no one had been foolish enough to test her. Lieutenant Kang Tiho was promoted to commander. He spent his time developing new strategies and training the next generation of officers. He still believed that the best way to win a war was to make sure your enemy was too afraid to start one. Dr. Yoon Minji returned to her research, studying the many species that humanity had now encountered. She wrote papers about Deathworld psychology and the nature of mercy. She believed that humanity's greatest strength was not their capacity for violence, but their ability to choose when not to use it. Sergeant Cho Minyu retired. He settled on New Busan, the colony where this whole thing had started, and opened a small restaurant. He served Korean food to humans and aliens alike, and sometimes he told stories about the war. The aliens always listened with a mixture of fear and fascination. And Admiral Park Junho returned to Earth. He walked through the cities and forests of his homeworld, remembering why he had fought so hard to protect it. He visited the memorial for fallen soldiers, reading the names of those who had not come home. He wrote letters to their families, thanking them for their sacrifice. One night, sitting in his apartment, he opened his personal log and wrote a single entry. They expected negotiation. They should have done their research. He closed the log and looked out the window. The stars were bright and countless, full of worlds and species that humanity had yet to meet. Some of them would be friends, some would be enemies, some would make the same mistake the collective had made. And when they did, humanity would be ready. Because that was what Deathworlders did. They survived, they adapted, they fought when they had to. And they never, ever gave up. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. The next species to encounter humanity would remember it. Do not threaten the children of Earth. They bite back.